Did you know that the Gardener's Workshop offers online courses? Whether you're a gardener or a flower farmer, we cover it all, allowing you to increase your skills at your own pace. So check out our full list of courses today at thegardenersworkshop.com. The Gardener's Workshop, turning all thumbs green. Hey everyone, welcome to the Field and Garden Podcast. I'm Jessie from the Gardener's Workshop. For today's episode, we're playing an interview that Lisa recently did over on the Flower Podcast with host Scott Shepard. Scott and Lisa covered a broad range of topics, aptly named Looking Back and Moving Forward. So listen in, and I hope you enjoy.
Hello, flower friends. I'm super excited to share today's conversation with you. If you're new here, I'm Scott Shepard, and this is the Flower Podcast. I've been a part of the floral industry for over 33 years. I've worked with florists, flower farmers. I've done freelance design work, and yes, grown cut flowers too. If, like me, you've spent time in our colorful community, it's my hope that you'll find value and encouragement in our time spent together. Now let's get to today's episode. Well, everyone, today's guest is more than a flower farmer. She's an educator, a supplier of so many of the supplies we all need to grow, an author, her new book this year, The Cut Flower Handbook. And I'm excited and grateful today to have from Newport News, Virginia, Lisa Mason Ziegler. Welcome to the Flower Podcast, Lisa.
Hey, Scott, it is my pleasure to be back here with you again.
I can't believe I was looking. It's been 4 years. Like, where did the 4 years go?
Time just strikes off, doesn't it? No matter in every area of life, business and podcast too. Wow, that's amazing.
I know. And you have been so busy doing so many things. We're going to put a link to Lisa's first episode with us in our show notes. And of course, you can visit theflowerpodcast.com and all that goodness. We even have her interview on our YouTube channel. And that's also a great place to see many of the interviews. So Lisa, we don't need to get into your backstory because they can go listen to that there. You've got a lot going on. It's November now that we're finally there. And, I always tend to think about looking back at the last year, sort of this, this is the time where we have no rest, right? We're going right into making decisions for 2025. And sometimes you just got to take a minute and breathe and kind of reflect and plan. I don't know. Where's a good place to start? I'd really like to talk about that if we could.
I told you, Scott, that I mentioned that this is just so perfectly timed. I've just been hammering out the masterclass for my club membership for November, and this is exactly what it's about. And I'm a big believer in not just doing this at the end of the season. I talk about that in the broadcast and the masterclass inside the club, but I think this is a great subject. And I think that the best time to look back is when the wounds are still open.
Yes.
Because those are the ones, because let me tell you, the minute that you start digging into catalogs and shopping online and getting all caught up in all the beautiful things you can grow next year, all of those just painful, costly things that you screwed up this year, and that never ends. I'm in year 27 and I've got a long old list of screw ups that I need to attend to. You tend to just file them away. Our brain naturally does that. It wants to protect us, right? And It just makes them go away. So I really recommend sitting down. And, I am the other part of this, the masterclass is what runs my farm. And that's that big calendar that people have seen me talk about and write about for years. It's in my books. It's in Flower Farming School. It's in the broadcast now. In my membership. I am not a good journaler, believe it or not. As I'm a highly functioning dyslexic, learning disabled person. Mm-hmm. So a lot of words make me just close my eyes and go the other way. And I just really perfected a way to record what I needed to know for the next season. And to make it so I would actually use it. Because what do people do? They sit down and write all this flu in a journal, and then you close it and never open it up again, because who has time to read all that to figure out what to do for next year? So my recommendation is to really just sit down right now and think back and answer that question. Where actually, I have my notes right in front of me. The question I ask myself as a business person, this applies to flower farmers, this applies to gardeners, is what do I want more of next season or next year or whatever you're looking at, right? Whether that's certain flowers or your time, or what is it that you want more of? The good stuff. That's the gravy, the cream at the top, right? And then that process will help you actually do it, implement it, right? And the other thing that I really like to think about for me as a business person is um, what fed business? What was the success story of what fed our business? And I will tell you that the answer for me is almost the same every year, but it's very surprising. It is to cut, cut, cut. And I don't mean flowers. I mean, say no to more stuff. Get rid of the fluffy things that just you seem to love and like, but they're not really helping you. I mean, our grandmas were right, y'all. It is the basic simples. I mean, isn't it so funny? What you can think about is our food system. It's like how we all thought we were moving up in the world. We got TV dinners and all this pre-prepared food, and now we know it's killing us, literally. All
Right.
the pre stuff, and we're all now growing gardens and learning how to put it up so we can have it during the winter. And it's the same with business and flower growing, whether you're a farmer or a gardener. And, so for me, what really I want to feed my business is just saying no to more stuff, even things you might have been doing for a really, really long time. So I'm at this time looking at, for us, as my business is evolving and changing so very, very much. I've gone from I consider beginner flower farmers 10 years and under. When I hit that 10-year and started going into high production for about 10 more years, the last 5 years, I've been winding down from high production as we've led into this more of an educational platform and equipping people to actually do that. And I have to tell you, it is incredibly difficult for me to let go.
Mm.
Right this minute, right outside my door here in my work building, are tons of seedlings that we planted, but I laid the law and said, we're only planting this many feet of each flower. We do not need 50 feet of anything. We don't even need 20 feet for what we're doing now: education, imagery, videoing, demonstration. And it is the hardest thing I've ever done, Scott. I mean, to not have we used to plant back in high production. I had 40 120-foot beds of just cool flowers. That is a lot of dadgum flowers.
Wow.
Now I have 10 75-foot beds. And that's still a lot. That is amazing production. So it's really, really hard. And now is the time when we're actually still suffering from issues of me overplanting this past year. I knew it was the time for me to make these kinds of decisions. So I encourage people to just, all it takes is 30 minutes, a cup of coffee in the morning before your house wakes up. I get up really, really early to beat my husband and the dog waking up, because, that's just distractions. And just really focus on this, and it'll change your life, your business life, your garden, and your farm, because it spills over, because I live on my farm. So I suffer in all categories.
Yeah. Well, let's break down something for a second, because you said you're getting up early, which I understand because of the quiet, the focus, all that. But what are you actually doing in those early moments of your day to get yourself focused, or to find, to kind of, I don't know, sort of fine tune your day?
So first off, I decide that I'm going to do it. There's so much today about just people get really lost. You're the grown up in the relationship with yourself, right? And I've decided
Hopefully.
that it's true. We could go down a darn rabbit hole on that, but I've just decided that it's that important to me. I mean, I'm a person of faith. If I get up and the first thing after I hit the coffee pot and feed the dog so he can go back to sleep, is I spend about 30 minutes, whether it's reading or listening to, Discover the Word, which is a broadcast that I absolutely love, um, and pray. And that
Mhm.
just clears me for the day and equips me to face anything because you just have to trust. And you have to know somebody's got your back. And that's what gives me the gas to
Sure.
jump because it's jumping every day. I mean, whether you're flower farming or, because this is so funny. When I first started flower farming, I'm married to a man that owns a big family business, right? And so I've lived entrepreneurship on all sides of the dinner table, but I've sat in it and I talk to it. And as flower farmers, I always thought in the beginning that our work was harder than anybody else's in the world. We're growing stuff, the weeds are growing, you got to sell it, la la la. Well, friends, let me just tell you, it is the same in every business and in life. And if I'm not grounded in the morning, then it doesn't work. So I say 30 minutes. Some mornings I only get 10 minutes.
Sure.
Other mornings it goes longer. But then I'm telling you, at the close of that is when my mind just, if you'll notice that I post on social media pretty early in the morning, the first time of the day. And that's because when I come off of that, it's like my mind is just clear and I've forgotten the mess that doesn't matter. And I have try to have some kind of encouragement for my followers to actually benefit from, whether it's life or flower farming or husbands or dogs. So that's what that looks like for me. And so, like on the weekends, it doesn't always work out that way because Steve doesn't get up and leave. But that's kind of what my morning looks like. And I drink 2 big cups of coffee, straight up black. And that just gets me charged for the day. And then I walk my dog. I decided probably about 5 years ago that my sister made me realize this. She said, if you don't have time to walk your dog, who he just wants to walk down the street and back. It's about a mile. If you don't have time to walk your dog in the morning as a business owner of a successful business, what's the point?
Right.
And that's the day I decided that's exactly right. I have to decide to take the dog every morning. Anyway, so that's what my morning looks like. And that's what starts my day. And I structure. Monday morning, I then just plan my week. If I haven't done that already on Saturday morning. And that really helps. It's your guiding light.
Hmm. Well, there's a lot of great things that you just said, and I really appreciate that because I feel like so many times, I know we start our day picking up our phone or, not, or trying to clear your desk or trying all these things that are distractions.
Yes.
And it's so frustrating because you see that in hindsight, but when you're in the thick of things, that's hard. And I think that's great that you did that. And I also really appreciate what your sister pointed out because as business owners, so many times we put ourselves on the back burner. Yeah. And everybody else in front of us, whether it's our customers or our business or whatever the fire du jour is that we have to deal with. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that in prioritizing things. And what is the point if you can't take your dog for a walk?
It's true. And it just, you have to take a moment. If you start scrolling, and there are days that I do that. I mean, when I'm caught up in something, sometimes I'll just sit down with that cup of coffee, and for some reason, I'll open my phone and maybe Instagram is already open, and I'll be right there. It is so easy to watch other people live the life that you want. And I'm telling you, that is a dead end. You need to start living the life you want to live. And I look at Instagram, but not like I used to. My family will say, did you see so-and-so had a birthday? I'm like, I don't want to say it, but I say it. It's like, I don't scroll anymore, hardly ever. I just don't have time to do that because I'm trying to focus on living it, doing it myself, but it's hard. And we all fall
Mm,
in that trap. We
sure.
all fall in.
Sure. Well, again, thank you for that. One of the things you said a minute ago that I also really want to hone in on is cutting out the fluff. I think that is so important. It is a theme that I've heard more and more and more over the last year. And I don't know if that's coming off the pandemic and then all the craziness of the, 2022, 23 wedding insanity that was going on there for a minute.
Right.
And now we're coming up for air. And I don't know if people are trying to do that. How do you evaluate what's fluff?
So for me, it's kind of that's actually a gift of one of the gifts of being a dyslexic is we just kind of cut to the chase. We're problem solvers. And when you're a problem solver, and I don't like the word mindset, but that's basically what it is. A mindset just means is the way you think things. That's the
Mm-hmm.
mindset of a dyslexic person. It's like my brain does not process all the description. Just tell me what to do. And that's always been my teaching style. It's like, I think, and that's what people appreciate about me. It's like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I can remember describing Elliot Coleman, who the famous
Mm-hmm.
organic
Yep.
vegetable farmer that jump started the whole movement, right? Decades ago, is that Elliot just told me what to do. And I was able to then just jump in and do it. And as I have grown my business through the years and trying to learn more, because it's like I knew nothing about farming. I knew nothing about starting a retail business or building courses or teaching and it's like, so as you search looking for information, you realize how much fluff there is out there.
Mm.
And fluff just meaning information that really does not guide you in any way. And I will tell you that flower farming school is just the epitome of that. It's like there is no fluff in flower farming school. And some people are looking for fluff and, those people, that's fine. If you need fluff to get to the information, those are those people. I just don't provide fluff. And I think that people are realizing after the pandemic that there are so many parts of life that we have been missing out on for decades now. Gardening is one of them.
Yes.
And just doing stuff. You don't have time for fluff. Just give me the bottom line here. That's like, what do I need to do? How do I do it? It's like I describe myself. I am not a shopper. I'm a buyer. When I go into a store, I just bought a boulder. This is funny. We have friends that he has this rock quarry and sells these amazing rocks, right? Well, I've had this spot on my farm that I often want to stop and sit, but it's not a great place to have a bench. It's just too kind of far back in the corner. So I told Stevie, I said, I want to get a boulder. A boulder doesn't need maintenance. You know what I mean? The weed eating guy can weed eat around the bottom of it, and I don't have to worry about the weed eater eating it.
Yep.
So I went up there on a Saturday afternoon and I went to his shop. He has two shops. Went to his shop and I said, well, I've really come up here because I wanted to go to your rock quarry. I'm going to go there next. He said, oh, well, it's closed, but I'll take you there. He's an
Mm-hmm.
old friend. Let's go up there. Literally, he opened the gates. We went in. We drove to where the boulders were. We got out of our cars and walked over there was a whole field. There's acres of rocks, right? I walked up and stood and looked around and I said, you know what? I think that is the perfect one right there. It's about the right height for a seat. It's flat. It's kind of big, but it's not huge. I'll take that one. And when the driver delivered it like a month later, he said, you are the quickest shopper we have ever experienced in our life. He told me it took her 30 seconds to pick the rock out. I do not waste time because what's the point? I could have looked at all the rocks on that field, but guess what? This rock is doing the job. And that's what people, I think, can benefit from. And I had to pay a business coach years ago to drill into my head 70% is good enough. You do not have to be perfect. I was raised by a perfectionist, which can be a curse and it can be a gift. You can make it a gift. I've made it a gift.
Mm-hmm.
70% is okay. It is okay to make the wrong choice, to screw up, to make mistakes, have failures. Those are the best lessons ever. And I think that people have realized that through the pandemic. They just got an up close view of things they have not noticed in a long time,
Mm.
basically.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I think that there's a lot of things, and I appreciate what you said, because I feel like when it comes down to it, we're almost desensitized to the fluff.
Yep.
And it's that scrolling thing you talked about earlier. There's so much information now at our fingertips, but when you really sit back and look at it, it's really not that much information.
Exactly.
It's really, more smoke and mirrors, and, making sure that you feel good about whatever the smoke and mirrors are. And I think there's a lot, not deception, but there's a lot of illusion, and
Yeah.
it's so hard.
It is because, there are actually people that's their business is finding the hooks that stop us. And I fall for them. I mean, it's like, how can I get more people to stop and read my valuable information, right? And it's really, really hard. And so I'll tell you that as my business is evolving, we have made and are making the commitment that we're committing to the people that want the information. And you don't need, a million followers. You need 1,000 of the right followers, the people that
Right.
want what you're offering up. And my goal in 2025 is to teach people to trust the process. And
Mm.
until you understand what the process is, you need to trust the people that have gone before you and have done it successfully. Keyword, done it successfully. Because I tell you, there's a lot of advice being ditched up out there. I don't even consider, 10 years in a business and doing it, whether you're making a lot of money or not, is a level of success because you have stuck with it. It's not about the smartest, it's about the last man standing. It's like people quit long before they ever had a chance to even succeed. That could be a whole story in itself, right? How long do you fail before you actually make it?
Right. Right. I mean, history is littered with those stories of the people who didn't quit and finally succeeded. And why should we be any different, right?
It's true. How many, I forget the actual number, so forgive me if this is wrong. The gal who I don't even know her name that wrote Harry Potter was turned down like by 20 publishers. Do you know? Stephen King, all of these people that have succeeded, but all we look at is the end result. And people look at us when they come here, we do an open forum typically about once a year, usually in June. And people come here and all they see is this beautiful garden. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I could walk you through the nightmares, the tears, the laying on the floor, crying like a kid, kicking, saying, why am I crazy? Why am I doing this? But that's what it takes, Then what they say, the road too is, full of good intentions, but you've just got to understand that is the road. You have to go through those things to get here. And most people aren't equipped to actually do it. And, I feel like that's the real reason that we launched this. We don't talk about my club membership very much. It's just kind of started this year.
Right.
It is really about encouraging people because that's what people really need. They need to hear, I need to go in there and talk about a failure, show my seed starting failures. And it's like people are restored by seeing your weeds. And it's just really, really, people underestimate the power of support and encouragement from people that care about you and want you to succeed. So yeah, it's a new day, Scott, for many of us, but
Yeah.
not all of us.
No, and I appreciate that too. I feel like a lot of times when you say those things, pushing through and that struggle and the kicking and screaming on the floor and all those fun things, people, again, this is that illusion that I think we see on social media, that we don't see all that. But everyone goes through these things.
Yeah.
Everyone. I don't know a single soul alive that, I mean, even Aaron at Florette talks about this. I mean, it's like everybody goes through these things, and
nobody is exempt.
but you know what? That's what gives you so much information, so much knowledge to impart, so much wisdom, because you've walked that path. And that is one thing I will say, that there's a lot of people that are sharing information and they're sharing their experiences, which are great. But if you want to have a business growing cut flowers, you need to make sure that the people you're gaining and paying for information or courses or whatever have done that, have had a business, have had that experience.
You know, one of the things I can remember hearing this so many years ago from Frank and Pamela Arnowski, who are the super rock stars of the flower farm world. Them and Lynn Basinski, they're the ones that really kickstarted this movement decades ago. But I can remember, and I didn't quite understand it when, I'm not sure if it was Pamela or Frank that actually said it. They said, if you want to get from A to Z as quickly as possible, you know, you have to like join the ASCFG. You have to read the books. You have to hit the boards. Why do basketball players practice every day? Why do the Los Angeles Dodgers, who just won the World Series, why do you think they won? Because they practice all the blooming time. We have to practice as business owners and flower farmers, and we do that through doing the work and doing it with the people that have not spinning your wheels, because you can certainly do that. But what I tell people is, you know, you kill your morale, you give up. If you don't hit success as soon as it's possible, I mean, it's like, I love to say, it's like, how long is your family going to eat cereal for dinner? You know, for those endless days of flower farming, which I don't believe are necessary. When you really start from the beginning, just doing the work you need to do, you can end your day and fix dinner for your family if that's your job, you know, if that's your goal. But people dabble, hen, peck all over the internet, go down the wrong roads, and worse yet, invest so much money on things they don't even need. And then all of a sudden, 2 years in, those are the people saying there's no way people are making money flower farming. Well, they're not doing it the way you did it. No business person that was going to start, I always say the copy machine store because I have one on my way to work. Nobody would start a copy machine store without knowing something about copy machines and how to start a business. Flower farmers are so guilty of jumping in, you know, flying in on a magic carpet, you know, and thinking that's how it works. And it's not. It just takes work. Because I'll tell you, it's a great life. I actually love. I mean, I just pop out of bed in the morning wanting to do this, and it is not because it's easy. When I was in high production, or now as I teach other people how to embrace that, because looking back over this decades of doing it allows you to see the straightest paths and the huge mistakes you made. You know, it's like, why? I mean, Scott, I think back when I first started selling at the Williamsburg Farmers Market, which has become just one of the greatest markets on the East Coast. I dabbled in selling more mess beyond flowers because I always thought I needed to sell more different stuff instead of just focusing on growing more flowers and doing it better, right? I spent so much labor and time and money and frustration and tears. And I look back now, it's like I tell people, you need to niche down. You need to like grow flowers, grow them better, deliver them better, make it easier for your customers, better quality, easier, make more money. You know, I mean, it's like that's the things we need to focus on. And I totally am on with that.
You know, it's interesting. I've had the opportunity since moving to Nashville to work with several great local growers, and some of them have, you know, are continually pushing and pushing and pushing. And, you know, one thing I wanted to ask you, because I know this is a struggle for a lot of people, that, you know, if you're new to the market, sometimes it feels, and I'm going to just say feel, it feels like the dance floor is crowded now. That there's no room for me, or there's everyone that's growing these dahlias already, or there's everyone growing zinnias already. How do I find my niche in the middle of that? Because I have a passion for growing. I'm a good grower. I'm a good gardener, maybe. And they're trying to find their way into a market that's got a lot of people. What would you recommend or suggest?
Too funny. I just did a master class on this, where to sell your flowers. And I think that long before we start thinking about growing dahlias and what you're going to grow is you really need to do a little market research and figure out where can you sell your flowers. And in the master class, I went over, and it's not an exclusive list, 14 different sales channels, half wholesale, half retail. And you have to get imaginative. First off, I am, and Dave Dowling agrees with me on this. Whenever we get together, we can't stop yammering about it. With billions of dollars of flowers being sold every year, 6 to 8. I mean, I see different numbers, right? Annually, just in the United States. And Utah State says that's 10 million stems a day Americans buy flowers. And 80% of that's being imported. I mean, there is no ceiling, Scott. There may be ceiling at your local farmer's market, perhaps, or maybe even on the florist run, but there are tons of ways to sell flowers. And you have to find your niche, and then you have to make it work. And I think one of the biggest barriers that I've seen is that we have to make it so blooming convenient for people to buy and get our flowers. I mean, who is the big elephant in the room where everybody goes to get something instantly? They need to see when they're going to get it. It's not necessarily the best price, but it's the quick and the convenience. And that's what really needs to drive people. That's what we need to really focus on, because it's really crowded at the bottom, but it is not crowded at the top. And I believe that people are focusing on the wrong things. And there are several models of ways to sell, no matter where you are, potentially, that you just have to niche down on it. You're not going to walk into the market. I mean, how many years did I sit at a farmer's market it was a new market before we actually just really started having regular sales? 2 years. 2 years. I took home flowers and composted them. That's what success looks like, friends. You don't walk into the DuPont farmers market where Dave Dowling sold for 20 years and just scarf up the thousands of dollars that is sold there every Saturday morning. No, people sat there through the times when they weren't selling stuff because they figured it out. And I think there's like 3 or 4 or 5 flower growers at that particular market. So competition makes you better. And I know people say that and they hear it and they think, what does that mean? It's like, you find your niche, you address something that's not being done. But it's far more than farmers markets and florists and ways to sell flowers. And that's just one of the things that I really tend to harp on, is that people just want to get all caught up in growing the flowers. And then it's like, whoopsie, now I have 12 buckets of flowers. That one option that I thought I had didn't work out. I love saying that through my entire, so I sold commercially for 25 years. I always had more customers than I had flowers. That's the way you want to start. That's the other side of that. The other saying I love to say is you always start your business with cash in the bank and cash for purchasing everything. Because if you really want to sink your ship, start out in debt, right? Well, the other thing is the whole point of being a flower farmer is to sell the flowers, right?
Right.
So why would that not be your first point? And, you're not going to know the exact person you're going to sell to, but you're going to know what markets are available and what you need to do to run into it with the biggest win to woo in some customers. And so all through my 25 years, we always had more customers than I had flowers, and I always had wait lists. Do you know how wonderful it is to say to florists, I am so sorry, I'm not taking new customers right now, but I'll be happy to put you on a wait list. And if, one of my other florists closes or, falls off the planet, I'll call you. And what does that make them do? They call you every week and say, is anything available? And the same thing is for bouquet subscriptions and our members only private on-farm market, which was a huge success for me. And that was a channel that I developed and tweaked because I could not have a farm stand. I'm in the middle of the city, right? I have no greenhouses, much to most people's surprise. And I had to create a way to sell flowers to the people that were on the outside of my property line that were not allowed to walk onto my property and buy from me because of city ordinances, which I understand. I don't want the guy next door to me running a car auto shop out of his garage, right? So I developed a system, and that was a huge business for us that I had people waiting lists because we limited both, of the numbers that we had. And so it's just that the easy ways you thought you can't sell your flowers isn't available. Well, there are far more. I mean, you just have to keep falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up. And you have to start at the end to get at the beginning because it is really crowded at the bottom, but it is not crowded at the top. That's one of my favorite new sayings now. I just love thinking about that. Yeah, it's thick down at the bottom. And the other thing I want to say is, it might look like there's tens of thousands of domestic flower farmers on social media. I do not find that to be true. Most of them are searching for answers to questions and help, and actually have not started businesses because none of them will ever push through the fear of because to be a business, you have to get legal, right? Fearful, insurance, taxes, license, permits. You got to get all that mess out of the way. Eat the ugly frog first is my motto. The first thing we do in flower farming school is get all that mess done and let's get to the fun start, selling and growing.
I love that. Eat the ugly frog first. I don't think I've ever heard that saying before.
Oh my goodness, Scott, and you live in the South? Yes, the ugly frog. There's a book about it and a little short book you can read. It's like we always do the worst jobs first thing in the morning. I mean, and you know what that used to be in high production until we divorced her. That was Gumpfrina. Everybody hated Gumpfrina except for our customers. They loved it. Everybody hated cutting it. Oh my gosh. And so that was the first crop we did. And when you do the worst job first, it puffs you up for the rest of the day. You don't have to worry about that worst job. Why darken noon with something that can be done at 8 a.m.,
right.
and get done? And so, yeah, I do the worst job first.
There's a t-shirt there, I think, somewhere.
Oh, yeah. But, anyway, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. So we won't go in there. But, yeah, Scott, it's just always such a pleasure to talk to you and talk about things that I just don't often get to talk about. It's just the kind of the overview of where we've been and where we're heading as an industry. And I think we have so many great leaders in our industry and so many great resources. And I see our industry as a funnel. I see people getting brought in through some of that fluff. You know what I mean? People that never would have stopped. And then they're like, what is that? Can I do that? You know what I mean? It's like everybody has a role. And as the person moving through that funnel, the funnel is how do you get to the bottom line, to the education, the good stuff. I think you just need to know that there is opportunity for everybody. And if anybody can be a flower farmer, if I can be a flower farmer, anybody can be a flower farmer. City girl in the middle of a big city with a lot of ordinances, no greenhouses, no tractor for 12 years, no cooler for 8 years. And I became a big old successful flower farmer. And then that just opens more doors to you and allows you to do more things. And I just, right now, we're recording this in November, so they've probably already committed the flower sin. All of these beginner growers that are just spending so much money investing in tulips and anemones and ranunculus, which are incredible crops when you know how to grow them and you have people to sell them to. And that's what takes more people out before they ever get started. They spend a lot of money and their family doesn't want to support them after they either don't sell them or they fail growing them or both, and think you've done nothing but spend money. Why would we move forward? And now's the time that a lot of people are doing that. And friends, that's your goal. That's not where you start. You don't start in graduate school. You start in elementary school. to build a great foundation, because I want to help people build businesses that last. And that's what I've done. Here we are. It's different because it changes every year,
Right.
but we're still doing it. We're still
Yeah.
doing it profitably and successfully.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because I know I was talking with a newer grower, I think a month or two ago, and they were talking about not starting, but like, I mean, they've not really had a full year and we're already into growing tulips and some of these things. And you're right, it's a very expensive endeavor. And I always tell people, especially with things like that, it's better to start tiny and then just kind of work it out. But if you don't have the customers, it's really difficult. It's because a lot of times those are the early season things when people aren't even thinking about local flowers. And, they're still thinking about whatever, and when things start to warm up and it's spring and everyone's out in their gardens, and then that's when a lot of times a lot of flowers start becoming super popular. It really breaks my heart sometimes to see that, because I just feel like it's so much money. I mean, it's so much money.
Scott, the basic bottom line, the best advice I was ever given as a business person is keep expenses low and stack your money as much as you can to build your business from the stacking. And my whole motto in flower farming school, and what my whole life has been as a flower farmer, which is what I mirrored in flower farming school, is low investment, high return crops while you're learning how to flower farm. Now, I stayed on that path. I went through that. I grew tulips and I grew lilies for several years, and it became really obvious to me, you know what? I was spending a lot less when I was sticking with these crops, and there wasn't any there's no risk involved when I'm spending pennies on seeds versus a tulip bulb. I don't even know how much a tulip bulb costs anymore, but it's a lot more than a seed. And when you wreck that, it's just a greater loss. So low investment for a high return is the secret in every business, and saving your money while you're in the upswing. And then you can venture into those things, and make your own decision as a more educated business person. I think all of us do that. The ebb and flow of owning an online garden store, it's like you want to sell the things that are unique and special and different. Well, guess what? When they're unique and special and different, not everybody knows to buy them. So you realize why the staples, the staple crops, the staple everything that sell every week. I built my flower farm on growing staple flowers. Those were the flowers that flower professionals used every single day of their business life. I did not grow for weddings. I don't want to see a fabric swatch. I don't want to hear the word blush. I don't want to even see your pictures. All I did was grew flowers to sell to commercial people, that they could use those flowers for weddings, if they happen to have them, funerals, I'm sorry, bouquets. I fed their day-to-day business because I had a day-to-day business, and it was a gold mine to me. But people want to get all caught up in, blush and swatches. I just didn't want to, that whole, I'm the buyer, not the shopper. I don't even want to go down those roads. I just want to sell you the flowers. And once I have you on board, I just want to send you a list every week and sell them. You know what I mean? There is no reintroduction, which is what wedding work and all that stuff is all about. And my hat is off to the people that do that. That is an amazing industry. We sell a course about that too by Jenny Love, and it's amazing and it's very profitable, but it's different work. I chose different work from that.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of methods to sell flowers, Scott. People just haven't been introduced to them yet.
And I agree with that. And I feel like you talking about the wedding side of this, that is a totally separate,
oh my goodness,
almost business model, because you're trying to sell to people that use flowers 52 weeks a year. that are, a flower shop or somebody for their home or whatever, but they use them all the time. And they want whatever's beautiful, whatever's in season, whatever. It doesn't matter. They're not worried about it's too pink or it's not pink enough, or, I need solid white, not green, because I think of zinnias sometimes and like,
Right.
oh, it's too green, it's too yellow, it's not
Right.
white enough.
We don't have those discussions here. Those are like bad words. It's just so true. And I'll tell you this little short story. So we had this big members only on farm flower market, and we had we had 175 members, and that was our cap. And and these people, I started that 2 years in. So I started that in like 2000. It's 2 years after I started flower farming, and we just grew it through the years. And it was the same people rejoined constantly by buying shares. So, you had these lifelong relationships, and
Right.
it would famously happen. And it would happen on days that my sister was not here. It was always Friday mornings. And I can still remember her, one of our really long customers. Her husband was one of our doctors. So we were thick with this person, right? She comes in and she said, Lisa, I know you don't do this, but, my daughter is pregnant and it's a girl, and we're having a baby shower. And it was June. It was going to be June or July, right? So high flower season, right? She said, I want to have an all pink flower event. And I don't care what flowers they are. I just need all pink. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, we'll have so many pink zinnias. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, Kirky will do it. No problem at all. She said, I want like 500 stems. No problem. Oh my gosh, Scott, we had the worst year we had I can't remember if we had a nor'easter storm or whatever it was, like 3 weeks before this event. I did not sleep for one night between losing so many of our flowers and that event. And that reminded me why I just don't ever do that. I don't ever want to be a part of that. That confirmed the way that I don't ever promise. We do not promise. We never promised to our florist. They were trained. They knew. This is how they call me up and say, hey, Lisa, I know you can't promise, but that peach coxcomb that you grow that is so incredible, is it planted out in the field that it might be available for week 5 in, July or whatever? And I would say, yeah, we have a crop coming along. And if I have it, it's yours. I'll, reserve that for you. But we just never got involved in committing it just that's why I sleep good at night, Scott. I can't say this in the beginning. I didn't have debt in flower farming, and I never promised stuff in the future. And we just lived in the moment, and I didn't have to deal with those because we're just so worried about not fulfilling those obligations. At least I do, but I think that's every entrepreneur. You want to satisfy your customers. So my business was built around non-committal, and, to colors and everything else. And it worked out pretty peachy, actually.
Yeah, peachy, yeah. Speaking of peach, well, I appreciate you saying that. I feel like so many times we feel guilted into saying that yes or committing to something. And why do we do that? Because it's like we don't want to let our customers down, or maybe because we're so new and we're afraid of the 1 or 2 customers we have, we don't want to disappoint them. But we're not in control of anything. I mean, really, other than sweat equity.
The other reason is, Scott, you're desperate. You're desperate for cash.
Yeah.
You need money. You know what I mean? That really drives us, and that pressure of carrying debt really does that to you. I mean, yeah, you spend more money when you use a credit card, and it's so easy to press that button and purchase that stuff. And and then when you have that on your shoulder, it'll make you say yes to everything. I'll tell you another little quick story. I sold to Colonial Williamsburg for 18 years. I mean, they were one of our biggest customers, right? And Clark Taggart, bless his heart, he passed away about 3 years ago. He was the floral studio manager for like 30 years up there. And he called me. I mean, I would do anything Clark wanted almost. Well, I proved it. I did it. And I was so sorry I did. He called and said, and I always say it backwards, is it Garden and Gun or Gun and Garden magazine? They always did a big to do at Colonial Williamsburg once a year. And this particular year, they wanted their theme, and this was over a decade ago, more than a decade ago. Their theme was going to be no flowers. It was all we know now, we call it foliage and texture and
Hmm.
all that. He had a field. He wanted me to go forage and just get a ton of flowers. And of course, there was no budget. I could just name my price, which is what made me do it.
Hmm.
Um, oh my gosh, was I so first off, my sister refused to go into the field. She was sure a snake was going to bite her. And so I go in, I've got my dewberry boots on, those are killer leather horse boots, and I am out there foraging, and this is in the fall when the foliage is at its best, everything is seedy, everything is out there cutting. I packed my big van full of all this foraged mess that Clark wanted, not even considering all the fallout from this. Okay, I had to bring that van home because you have to forge it before you have to take it to them. I had to bring that van home, unload it into my building, bugs and all, into my building.
Oh
I
my
had to
goodness.
kind of strip it so we could hydrate anything that was actually
Needed
still
it.
alive.
Hmm.
And then hydrating this mess. I mean, they were making all kinds of crazy large installations. I mean, it didn't matter. They paid me a lot and it was wonderful because I could have used the cash at that point in time, but I would never do that again. You don't think about the fallout of doing these crazy one-time things. And Clark was happy, they were happy, everybody was happy, and I was happy. We weren't happy for a month after there because of the bugs I brought into my building. It was a problem. And anyway, think
Wow.
twice before you say yes, no matter how much the price is.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's a good lesson, though, because a lot of times you don't see the ramifications of that. I know. So there was a couple crops. I think I may have shared this story before, but there were a couple crops that I foraged, and I saw this stuff out there, and I'm like, gosh, this makes such a great cut flower. And sure enough, one of them, and I watched this plant for years along the highway, along the interstate. And I don't know if you know Baccharis, wood sorrel,
Mm.
I think is its name. Anyway,
Oh,
apparently it is a plant that likes coastal areas mostly. And apparently in Atlanta, it never existed till Hurricane Opal, I guess, brought seed or whatever, and then we had it everywhere. But of course, because of the treating the roads with salt, it tended to really like along the interstates and stuff. Anyway, so, and it usually starts blooming about this time of year. In fact, I think I even have some coming from California today, but it's crazy. Anyway, I would go and I would cut this stuff, and I would have literally a garage full of these branches. And we would sell them all. Everybody would love them. It was like something so different because nobody ever knew what it
right.
was. And anyway, because of the way we processed it, we had to cut it in the field. We had to cut it again, like cut it into water, and then we let it drink for a while. And then we cut it again to bunch it and to kind of get it all, pretty so that way it was usable and all that kind of stuff. Well, you know what? By the time that season was over, I had issues with my thumb cutting all that wood. And it was like, I ended up having to go to the doctor. I don't know how many times. The doctor bills for that crop. So, of course, next year, I've already forgotten about this, right? Next year, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's almost ready to cut. And my wife looked at me. She goes, I want you to think about the doctor bills that came with that crop and tell me if it was worth it. Because again, and I'm like, okay, fine. But it's really painful for me because it's so, in more than one way, because it was such a pretty thing and it was so different. It was so cool. So now I buy it in and it's somebody else does all
And
that.
Scott, that's just so funny. That's exactly the whole point of my looking back in November that I'm doing with the club. It's like,
Mhm.
while that wound is fresh, you need to write that down where you're going to look when that time comes next year.
Yeah.
Because we do just block it out. I mean, beauty trumps pain, and it just overcomes it. And yeah, so I totally understand that for sure. And when you're desperate, that adds to it. Or sometimes it's just the beauty overrides it all.
It's true. That is true. And especially when you, like, people were so excited to see it and it was so great. And anyway, it was a thing. I know that you started your club, your membership club, and I thought that was a wonderful idea. More and more people, I feel like, are trying to connect, trying to learn from each other, trying to do things. This has been your sort of your first year one of your membership. How has that been going? Tell us a little bit more about it. I also know you just recently got done doing your launch of your boot camp, which I think is pretty cool. So I feel like you're doing a lot more things to connect with people directly.
Sure. So, thanks for asking. So, the club really grew out of those people that just really like that continuous connection. And so, in the club, every month I do a live Q&A. I answer all your questions. You can submit them before, and then we actually take some live. Happens on an evening. It's recorded. It's put in the club, so you can go back and look at it. I do a master class each month, and then I do a broadcast, which is basically a podcast, but it's a private podcast. And usually they kind of connect, for each month. And the month of November is just all about this looking back, drawing a line in the sand. And I really love it. And so there's a community in there, which is the best part, where people connect and support each other. And then they have continued education going on in there, but it's more about being a private, supportive community. Of course, there's no, slash talk. We would never allow it. But you know what? We've never had to exercise that policing because these are people that are focused on growing flowers. We have flower farmers and avid gardeners in there. And it's just been really, really good. And we've kept it real affordable. I think it's like, don't even know if is it 24 or 24.95 or 19.95. You have to go look, but it's very affordable for the content. I mean, you can go in there and watch the past master classes, and then we do once a week. I do on Wednesdays. It's called the sowing circle. And during the season, I'm starting seeds. We're doing it together. You're seeing how I'm doing it, and I'm talking about that. And this time of the year, I'm doing some different stuff. I'm getting ready to make a great, all these peppers you see behind me hanging. I'm going to make myself a Christmas wreath, and I'm doing that on the sewing circle with folks. I've never done it, so it's not like I'm doing everything as an expert. And so the club has been really, really great. And it's kind of a backup to Flower Farming School. So yeah, we just came off of a 10-day launch. You can buy Flower Farming School anytime. That's my big online course called The Basics, Annual Crops, Marketing, and More. It's about starting and building a strong foundation of a flower farm. And so boot camp was the offer in this last launch of 7 live coaching sessions. So over like the next, I think it's like 10 weeks, till January 23rd, those 7 sessions are sprinkled out. And I'll address one of the class topics from school with each one. Like the first class in school is about getting the business started. It's the stuff, it's eating the ugly frog first. It is getting all that mess out of the way. And part of that is life balance, money matters. About if you don't have a couple $1,000s to start with, then you need to get a side hustle and get $2,000 to start with so you can start right. But I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, but I'm leaning towards that, that boot camp is going to kick off each time with an intensive training of some subject from that class, right? And I'm really leaning that for that first boot camp session is going to be time management, because I'm going to tell you, Scott, if you can't manage your time, you will never manage a business. And so it's going to be an intensive why and how. This is why you want to, Albert Einstein had the same 24 hours in a day that you do. Mother Teresa has the same 24 hours that you did. And look what they did. It's time management. So there'll be an intensive training at the beginning of each boot camp session. Then we'll have a live Q&A. And then we're going to also, the way to success is to always continue to learn how to learn, right? And so we know now that our course has so much resources in it that people need to help learning how to move around. It's keyword searchable. You can look up anything in Flower Farming School. but it helps to see it for a couple minutes, right? So that's going to be part of boot camp. So all of my students that are enrolled prior to that launch last week of October 31st are going to get invited to boot camp and have this intensive training and this live with me, because we do have a private student community also, a Facebook group where people can reach out to me when needed. But I'm telling you, Scott, with the disasters that just happened in North Carolina
Oh
with,
my goodness.
it's just, I can hardly talk about it actually, but I just want to say the connections made through Flower Farming School are deep. One of our students, both of these students were back several years ago. They've been in the group. One of them had damage. The other one actually left their state and came up and helped that student to regain some damage that was done. And heartwarming stuff goes on in there in addition to support and help and answering. And it's just being with people that are on the same page with you. And so Flower Farming School is always available, but from time to time we have special offers. And the way to learn about those special offers is to sign up for my farm news. And that is on the bottom of every web page over at thegardenersworkshop.com. You will be in the know. I would say 80% of the emails we send out are content driven, showing you, hey, did you know? Here's the Seed Talk podcast. Here's the blog that will tell you this, or here's a live about, Scott, about the flower podcast. So that's how you stay in the loop with us, because we know we have a lot of stuff, but this newsletter is the way to stay in touch. And I would just love for folks that are interested in content with a little bit of fluff thrown in on the side from time to time and a little dog stuff to join with us. Would love it. And it's just always, Scott, just such a pleasure to see you, and thank you for bringing all the personalities to our view through the Flower Podcast. We really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I can't thank you enough for today, because you bring such great perspective and wisdom and experience to every conversation. So thank you. Thank you so much.
You are so very, very welcome.
I cannot thank Lisa enough for sharing her time, wisdom, and encouragement today. We'll include several of the show notes on her page at theflowerpodcast.com. We're also going to be moving her page from the archive section to our new group of guests for 2024 on the website to make it easier for you to find. If you're new to the Gardener's Workshop, I have to say that I personally continue to learn and enjoy many of the programs, podcast episodes, and even her app and the shopping program she hosts on Fridays. Visit thegardenersworkshop.com to explore all the opportunities to learn about gardening and growing cut flowers as a business. I can't thank you enough for listening today and taking the time to follow us here and on social media. Till our next podcast episode, I hope your week is filled with amazing flowers.
Okay, welcome back. So if you haven't listened to the Flower Podcast before, Scott always has such interesting guests on, and I encourage you to go check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes for that. And if you like what you're hearing here on the Field and Garden Podcast, we'd love it if you'd tell a friend about us and leave a review for us wherever you get your podcasts. So that's all for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Jessie from the Gardener's Workshop, and I hope you have a great day.